required was for us to make, 12 little baby images.
One of the improvements to Mortal Kombat 3 over Mortal Kombat 2 was the addition of using 3D graphics to come up with some of the backgrounds.
A lot of the effects, from little blood explosions, they weren't so much done by hand anymore. They're actually done in 3D.
MK3, we took the same approach to making that game as we did with Mortal Kombat 2, where basically it's more, bigger, better.
Some of my favorites from MK3 are probably Sindel's when she screams your skin off. She's a very loud voice.
Reptile, where he kind of pukes acid on the opponent and you see him the acid eat away at the other guy.
Sector had one of my favorite fatalities in Mortal Kombat 3. His chest doors would open up, this huge mechanical device would open up, squish him, go right back into his chest. I thought it was funny because there was no way that size of a squisher could come out of his chest, but yet it did.
Also, there was one where Jax kind of grew into this giant and then he kind of stepped on the other guy. Again, that was a little bit more towards the humorous side, but it was something kind of outrageous nonetheless.
Wins.
Animalities, I believe, were created by the fans. They wanted to see different modes. They wanted to see nudalities, which of course we couldn't do.
And one of the rumors that wasn't true was this feature called an animality.
That someone put out there, oh, you can turn Scorpion into an animal, and which wasn't true. But then we decided to make it true in MK3.
The reason some of these alities weren't done past Mortal Kombat 3 is because it's difficult to get things to transform in a 3D environment. I mean, I suppose you could do it with a puff of smoke that covers the change, but to morph, one completely different model into another completely different model, is a little difficult to do.
It was definitely different doing fatalities in MK4 as opposed to the previous games because everything was in 3D.
Definitely, I think the biggest thing was the ability to sever limbs, and we were never able to really do that before. And so, when you were able to blow people up and just tear them literally limb from limb, that opened up a lot of creative input for more things that we could do.
Now we can move the camera around. We did a lot of funny, maybe 3 camera cuts of the same, explosion or something like that. Big thing is we'll have the body blow up and have the camera cut around it. Then the last camera cut, you see the head rotating and hit the camera and fall.
Well, the biggest limitation on the animation in the 2D games was that every frame of animation was an entire separate image. So it was very memory intensive to have smooth animation. So with motion capture, we have this full fluid motion that wasn't available in a 2D game.
Animation-wise, it actually becomes a little bit easier because you only have to capture the motion once and then you apply it to a 3D model, as opposed to having every single character in the digitized world. You'd have to have every single character act out, having every fatality done to them.
One of my favorite fatalities in MK4 was Reptiles. The one specifically where he actually jumps up on the victim and just starts gnawing at him. And he gets up, he pushes the victim down. The camera zooms up on the character's face and you just see a mutilated face. It was just really, really gruesome and really effective.
Next would probably be the Shinnok one, where his hand, that skeleton hand, would come up and drag you into hell. That was kind of cool too.
I came in at the very end on doing fatalities. I did Reiko, so that's the one I remember the best. Not that it was a very spectacular fatality, but it was the very first Mortal Kombat fatality I ever programmed.
I think the advantage for not having to deal with the arcade was that we had a fixed platform. I mean, granted, the console systems vary, but not having to worry about the real big differences between graphic chips and things that the arcade systems have versus the consoles.
The time that it takes to go from raw data to finished product is much shorter. You get to spend a lot more effort on the creativity side of it.
We just about tripled our polygon count. We expanded our texture size.
tremendously. We expanded motion and a lot of the effects we could do. So it opened up a lot of doors to do wild fatalities.
So with Deadly Alliance, suddenly we knew we were in the home. We didn't have to ask for 50 cents every 2 minutes. So we can really stage our fatalities and make them these big events. And that's why they started becoming a lot more elaborate.
My favorite fatality in Deadly Alliance has to be the Sub-Zero pulling the whole skeleton out of his victim. That was the first fatality programming that I got to do, and it was a lot of fun putting in the effects, the blood, the bones.
One of my favorites was Cyrax's, where he had this hydraulic arm that came out and grabbed the victim and just like slammed him up and down until he was a bloody pulp. That was good times.
I think my favorite fatality from Deadly Alliance was Kung Lao's. It was, you know, there was a little bit of humor, but it was also kind of flashy, stylish. You know, he threw his hat, it stuck into the guy's head, and he fell down. And then he would kind of stomp on the opponent, and the head would fly up, and he would catch it and do this kind of fancy pose, which was, you know, silly in some ways, fancy and stylish in other ways, but it was probably one of the more elaborate fatalities from Deadly Alliance.
For MK Deadly Alliance, we scaled back to only one fatality per character, basically due to time factors. We didn't have time to do 2 for every character.
It just got to the point where at the end of the game we just couldn't get all the content in. So we ended up deciding on 1 fatality per character, and that's how it ended up.
Part of the reason we decided to go with 2 fatalities in Deception is we'd heard pretty clear from a lot of the fans that they wanted more. They really loved the fatalities in Deadly Alliance, and they wanted us to expand and keep adding, so we decided to go for 2 with each character.
Kira, one of the new characters, she just kind of does like, she throws her knives at the victim's feet, the guy gets stuck, and then she kind of does a little walk and then just rips the body in half and throws it out. Working with like the animators, especially Carlos, who does the animation, it was kind of funny seeing like how he would be the guy who's doing the walking for the female character.
One of the most disturbing fatalities is the Melina one. And then when she's done, she does this sexy sort of, you know, that was awesome. And what the fans don't know is that was Carlos.
Baracho takes a swig of some wine, and then he takes a torch and lights the guy on fire. And then the other one is him basically, you know, expelling gas or fire.